Great. Welcome everybody. This is Bill Falk, Chief Revenue Officer at Infrascale, and as was announced, Ken Shaw, my super sales engineer and special guest, is here with us as well. We're going to tag team through our presentation, and again, thank you everybody for your time and attention. That's me. Here's the high-level agenda for us today. We're going to talk a little bit about, why would you consider a disaster recovery solution, some of the information about what's needed to survive disasters, some key steps to keep your data and systems protected, and then a little bit about Infrascale. And then, of course, we'll have time for questions at the end. So I think everybody on this call is well aware of the overall requirement to protect your data and systems. Our economy suffers hundreds of billions of dollars a year in lost productivity and data loss, and that is something that is only going to get worse. And these, interestingly, these occurrences are not just from electrical outages, system corruption, human error, or acts of Mother Nature. They're increasingly caused by a different type of threat, ransomware, which is a relatively new type of threat. The data here speaks for itself. The data here is also out of date. These numbers go up dramatically every day, both by a number of threats, the types of threats, the amount of ransomware that's been paid. Just in 2016 is nearly $1 billion. And depending on who you listen to, the various sources will say that that's going to trend up to become a multi-billion-dollar industry or sub-industry over the next next couple of years. It's also fair to say that if you haven't been affected or impacted by ransomware, you will. It's just a matter of time, sort of the same thing with your data loss situation. It's different also in that these are not random attacks. These are targeted attacks at specific companies and users and so forth. And the other thing that's happening is that while in the early days these were even sort of consumer-based attacks to endpoints, there's now lots of examples where these types of attacks are targeting corporate infrastructure, file systems, databases, mail servers, and so forth, the types of infrastructure that is required to keep companies operational. So what can you do if you get affected? There's really only a couple things you can do. You can remove the affected machine from the network. You can fool the computer and reset the BIOS back to a previous time before the attack, or you can roll back to a previous image prior to the attack as well, to your restore point. But you really only have a couple of options, and one is paying the ransom, which no one wants to do. And the other option is to restore your system, as I mentioned, to a prior point before the attack took place. So, moving on from there, we're going to talk a little bit more about how we see things, what are the required elements of an effective backup and disaster recovery strategy. Top 3 items. Before I do that, this slide attempts to, or actually does a pretty good job of describing the difference, our perception of the difference between backup and disaster recovery. Backup, which is a very well defined discipline and something that we do quite well. We have lots of customers that are just using our solution for backup, whether it's on premise or if the data is being replicated to a secondary site, that's fine. What you have there from a restoration standpoint, however, is less than ideal depending on the use case that is under consideration. It's typically going to be hours or days for the data, and it's typically all about the data to be brought back online, and then you have to rebuild your systems and so forth and so on. Where the technology has evolved over the last couple of years is more to a disaster recovery requirement, where given the cost of downtime, speed of recovery is what is driving all this. And that's something that we should all be considering when we look at different options. The other thing is to look at the cost of the infrastructure. So typically for a DR type of system, we're talking about a primary site and a secondary site at least. A lot of the architecture from certain vendors requires the same infrastructure to be duplicated off-site, and that can be incredibly expensive and something for everyone to be aware of. Furthermore, looking at the system and how it's designed from an end-to-end perspective. So can it protect both physical and virtual? Where can the data be stored? Does it have to be stored in a proprietary cloud? Can it be stored in a public cloud, etc.? What can you recover at a point when you need to recover? Can you recover files, email, databases? Can you recover the whole network if that is part of the requirement? Being able to recover and boot either locally or in the cloud is important, and back up any device. So it's not always just about the servers and so forth in the data center. It extends out to the endpoints, mobile devices as well, and looking at the coverage that's required from an operating system. So depending on your environment, you may have a mixed environment, and your solution should be able to cover all of those different operating platforms.
And so this is Ken here. I'm going to jump in. I'm the founder of Infrascale. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, Ken. Yep.
Yes, I hear you.
Terrific. So Bill's touched on some great things on this previous slide, and one of the things I really want to emphasize is there was a little thing in there that said recover anything. And most data protection vendors will give you back a file or a folder or a disk. They'll give you back data. But at the time of sort of a big disaster, you don't want back data. What you want back is, oh, the animation's playing. I was going to play through that. Oh, well. What you want back at the time of a disaster is actually a running system, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to step back through this animation and sort of walk us through what you do when things go bad. My first job out of college, like many people on the call, was being the system administrator, right? So it was my job to take the tapes off site and make sure they were secure. We used Iron Mountain. And, you know, when I got the call at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, and these calls always seem to come at 2 in the morning, the path to recovery involved me getting out of bed, putting my boots on, jumping in the car, driving to the data center, getting the tapes, doing a restore, waiting an indeterminate number of hours, perhaps 4, perhaps 8, and then once I had my data back, connecting that data back to new computing infrastructure and applications, reconfiguring them, and then bringing them up. The whole thing was very manual, the whole thing had a variable timeline, and the whole thing required me to go and do stuff. So if, God forbid, they couldn't reach me at 2 in the morning, which as an Australian wasn't completely out of the question, they're not going to come back online. Let's contrast that with a modern DRaaS service, disaster recovery as a service offering, like Infrascale's. Instead of getting out of, so the end users are happily working away, we have a disaster such as a ransomware attack. I roll over and grab my iPad off the nightstand. I log in to the Infrascale recovery portal and find the office affected. I literally hit the play button. It's a play button, and 90 seconds to 2 minutes later, the entire environment has come back online. Okay. Now, so long as you've got fewer than 200 servers, what I just said is true. We are going to automagically bring back your entire environment running in the cloud, in the proper sequence with detailed orchestration and network recreation in the cloud, right, with the push of a button. And so that is really freaking cool. And it really dovetails with why you would want to work with Infrascale. Our mission is relatively simple but very bold. Our mission is to eradicate downtime and data loss. We have a pandemic right now in the computer world and in information technology. On Friday, half of the B2B internet went down because DYN suffered a massive DDoS attack. In August, a blade failed in Delta's data center and 3,300 flights were grounded. In June, a similar system outage at Southwest Airlines grounded 1,000 flights. So the overall cost of the U.S. economy last year alone was $100 billion for system downtime, despite the fact we spent $12 billion trying to prevent it. What does that tell you? It tells you that the systems we have are rubbish, right? Because they're really expensive and they're not stopping these incidents. So Infrascale, we're 170 people with one clear mission: to eradicate downtime and data loss and make it a quaint little artifact of our computing history. So a little more about Infrascale, and I'll talk later about it, but what we do is DR as a service, push button fail over to the cloud. We do it for servers, hypervisors, and endpoints. So pretty much no matter what infrastructure you've got, we're going to be able to bring it back up online in the cloud in 15 minutes or less. Last year, we were Gartner's cool vendor for business continuity and disaster recovery, and I like to brag about that in bars. It makes us the coolest vendor in the nerdiest business in the entire world. And this year, Gartner named us the top visionary for DR as a service, because what we're doing truly is transforming the industry. Using software in the cloud, we can bring your environment back up and running and do it 5 times faster than the global leader of DRaaS, which is IBM, at 1/5 of the price. So I want to say that again. We are 5 times faster than IBM at 1/5 of the price. And so I'm going to pass the ball back to Bill now, and Bill's going to just give you a couple of highlights of our product, and I'll be back with you in a little bit.
Thanks, Ken. So this is not a deep dive demo. We encourage you to come to us afterwards, and we'd be happy to provide more detailed product demonstration. But this is our dashboard. It's the point at which you enter into the world of Infrascale. One of the things that I mentioned that Ken also reiterated, the ability to manage all of the types of devices that need to be protected, whether that's a mobile device, a laptop, through to a server, and you can access all of those systems. You can look at what's going on with them. You can monitor their performance. You can see pretty much everything you need to see about what's going on from a backup and DR perspective through one dashboard out to all of your endpoints. If you're a partner, an MSP, an IT service provider of some form, this dashboard is wonderful in that it allows you to do the same across all of your customers and their endpoints. It's very well put together from a manageability standpoint. This one here is just another example of one of the screens. We're also recently decorated for ease of use, so a lot of very important things taking place underneath the hood, but for IT administration and system management, the ability to easily manage the environment is absolutely critical. Okay, and this, I'm going to play this video here highlighting what we do from an anomaly detection back to the ransomware story.
And before you do that, Bill, I just want to set this up a little bit. So I don't think the video started playing. Look, ransomware is insidious, okay? And 2 big problems with ransomware. One is figuring out when the infection occurred, and it usually occurred weeks and weeks and weeks ago, right? So people get the ransom notice and they think that, oh gosh, I must have recently been infected. No, bollocks. You were probably infected a month ago or 2 months ago, and it's been sitting there working away. So one huge problem facing ransomware recovery is finding the day that you need to turn back time to. And the second thing is backup aging. Most folks are keeping a week or a month of historical versions. So if they needed to roll back 3 months, that becomes a non-trivial exercise. With Infrascale, not only do we keep persistent, consistent snapshots of your environment, but we keep an unlimited version history. I have a demo where I show the rollback of my computer to the year 2012, right? And we keep all of those snapshot versions for free as far as you're concerned. So Infrascale's got two very unique properties. Firstly, we've built some advanced machine learning-based heuristic analysis tools into our system, which we're going to see here in this video, which will actually help you detect the day you were infected. But secondly, we'll let you roll back to any point in time. Bill, let's play the video.
Let's give that a try.
Tab, and then click on Monitoring. Once in the monitoring page,
hopefully the audio's
you'll
working.
see the Enable Anomaly Detection setting at the bottom. Here, we let the user set a threshold, over which we'll initiate a warning. The way it works is that we calculate a rolling average of modified files over time for a particular device. If the modified file count for a backup is this percentage over that average, we'll initiate a warning. If you're subscribing to warning and error events, you'll get an email, but it also appears in the general monitoring page where we can see more information. If we see an event, then we recommend investigating. You can click to see more details, and you can also go to Manage and download the logs directly to investigate at a file level. Typical users are going to back up between 5 and 10 modified files per day at most. So anything 3 to 4x that, 300 to 400%.
Okay, then back over to you, Ken.
All righty. Well, so as I've already alluded to, Infrascale's solution sounds simple, but it's incredibly powerful. We guarantee that we will bring back your systems within 15 minutes after any disaster. Now, I want to just stop and dwell on that for a second. Have you ever come across another backup and disaster recovery vendor that guarantees you an end-to-end SLA, right? We're not just a software vendor or selling you a box or selling you some tools. We deliver you the entire solution, soup to nuts. So we can guarantee that if you get flooded or burnt to the ground or you suffer a ransomware attack, we can bring back your entire network in 15 minutes or less, guaranteed. Now, we say 15 minutes, but it usually takes 1 or 2 minutes. We're practically an HA solution, a high availability solution, even though we live in the subcategory called DR as a service. And look, I'd love you guys to ask us questions. There's only a couple of questions on the line for us here, and please do use the questions tool to ask. But this thing here is really the most important thing to take away. Infrascale guarantees that we'll bring back all of your computing systems in 15 minutes or less after any disaster. I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, and they were telling me that even multi-billion-dollar financial institutions took 3 weeks to come back up online after Sandy. I actually know one of the technicians who works at Delta, and it took them 18 hours to bring that system back online. And they would have given anything to be back online after 15 minutes. So we really are disrupting the status quo in the industry. And because we provide the entire solution, the software, the hardware, the network, the data center operations, and the cloud abstraction and orchestration, we can guarantee you this outcome. Now, if you think about data protection, I like to think of it in terms of 4 buckets of value. I call this the data value pyramid. At the bottom, we have endpoints, think laptops. Then we have remote office and branch office. Then we have the core data center, and then we have mission-critical workloads. And traditionally, in data protection, the top 2 of these have been taken care of by the big iron incumbent vendors, and the bottom 2 of these get ignored. And the big iron incumbent vendors, I'm going to pick on Veritas, they're not here today. A company like Veritas or Commvault, they're going to cost you an arm and a leg, and at the end of the day, their products simply don't achieve the level of data protection we need. They don't work in this modern, distributed, cloud-driven world we live in. At Infrascale, we've got a solution that goes across all 4 layers. So we have the 15-minute failover for your mission-critical and core data center workloads, and then we have award-winning cloud backup technology for robo and for endpoint. And so just sort of breaking those 2 apart, Infrascale Cloud Backup is for backing up pretty much any device, whether it's a Mac or a Windows laptop, whether it's a tablet, whether it's small robo servers running SBS. And then Infrascale Disaster Recovery is about protecting all of your most important workloads. And when I say we protect all devices, what am I talking about? Well, we literally mean these 4 buckets: mobile devices, desktops and laptops, physical servers, and virtual servers, right? And the modern enterprise has all 4 of these. It's no longer the case that we can have a monolithic unified infrastructure devoted to just running Windows on physical Intel boxes. In fact, Infrascale supports over 100 versions of the various operating systems. So whether you're a VMware shop or a Hyper-V shop, whether your database is SQL Server or Oracle or Postgres, whether you're running Unix or Linux, Infrascale's got a solution for you, right? And that's part of the power of Infrascale. We not only support the mixed form factors, whether that be physical servers or virtual servers or endpoints, but we support all of the major operating systems. A lot of the other chaps in the industry will just do VMware or they just do Hyper-V, which we think is a very limited way of doing things. How many people in the audience just have VMware? None of you, right? You have VMware, but you've got some Windows running on Metal. You might have some Linux running on Metal. You've probably got some Hyper-V in test and dev. So I've never understood these vendors who just limit themselves to one particular hypervisor or one particular platform. Let's take a Shadow Protector or a Datto. These guys are very strong if all you've got is Windows running on Metal. But if you've got anything broader than that, it doesn't work. So at Infrascale, we've always focused on supporting all of the major platforms on the source side of things. And we think that is mission critical for any serious data protection vendor. And then on the back end, we also want that same level of flexibility. So if you were working with, again, I'll pick on Datto because they're not here. Datto has their own cloud and that's it, right? At Infrascale, you can use any cloud. You can use the Infrascale cloud to be sure. We have 15 NOCs around the world. Or you can send your data to a private cloud environment, or you can send your data to the major third-party clouds, whether that's the IBM Smart Cloud, whether that's Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform. We support all of them. And then, like Cohesity, as you heard earlier, we also support paired appliances. So if you just want to have a couple of appliances and do active-active replication between them, you can do that too. And this all sounds pretty good, but how do you know that what I'm saying is true? Well, here's a map of every business on planet Earth that's using our product. We're being used in more than 170 countries. We're bigger than the United Nations. We protect 1 million devices around the world. The device is usually a VM or a physical server. Over 55,000 businesses with 900 distribution partners. As I sort of mentioned earlier, we are the coolest vendor in the nerdiest category on Earth. So we were Gartner's cool vendor for business continuity last year. And this year we're at the top of the visionary box for DR as a service. Why? Because, to quote, the companies who need to protect more data, Infrascale's recommendation is to get a bigger and better cloud, not a bigger appliance. And I like this quote. Infrascale's 15-minute RTO is among the lowest in the industry. In fact, we have not come across a single other vendor who will guarantee you an SLA, let alone a 15-minute SLA. I could go on and on all day, folks. I don't have the time. So what I'd really encourage you to do is just type into the questions tool 60 days free. If you do this, we'll send you out some of our equipment. You can play with it in your data center. We'll do demos for you. I think seeing is believing. I would love to work with you. I would love to send you one of our clusters and get it set up in your data center, completely free of charge, no risk for you, so you can go hands-on and see what I'm talking about. If you're interested in this, if you're interested in getting a demo, getting some free equipment, getting hands-on with the technology, just type in 60 days free, and we'll follow up with you all. And I think with that, Billy Boy, we're going to Q&A.
Well done. And we're ready for questions, moderators.
Yeah, great presentation, Bill. Thanks, Ken. So yeah, we do have quite a few questions here from the audience. So the first one is they're asking here, how do I get my data back on site from the cloud? Like, what's that process?
Yeah. So First things first, after the disaster, let's get you up and running, okay? So we're going to bring up your systems and, run in the cloud until the flood has subsided or the ransomware attack is solved. Then once you're finished, there's a very simple and elegant fail-back mechanism which allows you to bring that workload back on-prem. However, if you're interested in running that workload on a persistent basis in some sort of cloud fabric, we also support this. So you don't have to bring the workload back on-prem. You might want to move it out to an Amazon or a Google or an Azure. So it's very, very flexible. And like I said earlier, we don't just recover data because, frankly, a file or a folder or a disk is kind of interesting. What is way more interesting is a running, working server or 50 or 60 or 70 running, working servers that are interconnected and internetworked and working the way they were working before the disaster. And that's where we specialize. Of course, we can give you back files, folders, and disks. But what we would prefer to give you back is an entire running data center in the cloud.
Absolutely. Yeah. Got it. Where are your data centers? Someone here is asking.
Well, so most importantly, because we run on top of all the major public clouds, there are about 60 locations around the world that you can choose from. Now, in addition to the POPs for all of those public clouds, and I'm talking about IBM, I'm talking about Google, and I'm talking about Microsoft and Amazon, Infrascale herself maintains 15 points of presence, 6 in North America, including 1 in Canada. We've got several in Asia, several in Africa, and several in continental Europe, and then, of course, the United Kingdom, which thinks that Brexit is becoming its own little Western Europe. So pretty much anywhere in the world that you want to do business, we have our own local captive facility, and then have deep partnerships with all the major public clouds.
Got it. Another question is, are you HIPAA compliant?
Well, not only are we HIPAA compliant, and by the way, this is something you should ask every vendor here today. Are you HIPAA compliant? Yes. Are you Sarbanes-Oxley compliant? Yes. Are you PCI compliant? Yes. Are you CJIS compliant? Yes. Are you FINRA compliant? Yes. Our double-blind encryption means that data is encrypted with a key that only you know when it leaves your premises. It comes over the wire to us, and we encrypt it again with a key that only we know. So for a hacker to get to that data, he would have to know Ken's key and David's key, right? And the chances of being able to do that are geometrically lower than if he only had to break one of our encryption ciphers. If Sony had been using Infrascale, it's probable that those leaks would never have occurred. If David Podesta had been using Infrascale, it's probable that we wouldn't be reading all of his emails right now. And so whether you work with Infrascale or not, insist that your vendor support double-blind encryption. And if they don't, run in the other direction.
Okay. Another question is about, can you perform a test recovery after hours? Can you schedule it so that it's not interruptive to the business?
Oh, absolutely. You can do recoveries anytime you like, and they are non-disruptive. We maintain multiple VLANs in the cloud, so you can actually do a push-button restore anytime you like. You can do it during business hours if you want. It's not going to be disruptive. It's only when you flip into production recovery mode that it's going to then be broadcasting on the same LAN as your other existing infrastructure. And I'll give you an example of this. We had a customer on the 2 weekends ago. 7 offices, MPLS circuit, which, oh, by the way, we support Direct Connect and MPLS and other non-public internet connectivity, which I think is a big differentiator. I'm not sure that anybody else today here is doing that. This customer had 6 headquarters locations, 6 locations on MPLS. They took headquarters offline. They took off their core data center. Our virtual routers then started broadcasting BGP signals across the MPLS ring, took up the workload, did all of the re-IP addressing and NATing to trick the rest of the network into redirecting to our cloud. And within, I think it was 4 minutes, they had resumed complete operations in the cloud, right? Non-disruptively. Super, super cool stuff. Frankly, it wasn't possible 3 years ago, and it is possible today. So we'd love to do that sort of a pilot with you and work through your requirements and give you guaranteed 15-minute recovery.
Awesome. I've gone ahead and popped up the poll question from Ken and Bill here on the screen. Would you like to learn more about ransomware or BDR from Infrascale? If the audience doesn't mind making a selection on that question. A couple more questions here, Ken and Bill. Another one is, what are the bare minimum system requirements to get started with Infrascale?
Almost non-existent, frankly. So the system requirement, there's no chance you're not going to meet them. If you've got space to put one of our devices on-prem, or one you in your rack, then that's easy, and our appliance will take care of the rest. If you want to use our virtual appliance, then make sure your hypervisor of choice, and of course we run on both VMware and Hyper-V, make sure that you've got a few gigs of RAM that you can dedicate toward it, and at least a couple of virtual CPU cores, and we'll take care of the rest. Most of our power sits in the cloud, and what that means is that the imprint, the level of resources that we're going to consume in your local environment is very, very small because we're doing all the heavy lifting out in the cloud.
Nice, nice. Another question that came in here, they're asking about, are you allowed to set high priority backups versus lesser priority backups if space is limited?
Absolutely. We have, there's 1,000 slots in our prioritization system. So you can literally, if you really wanted to, have 1,000 different levels of priority. Most folks will just use the slider and pick high, medium, or low.
Okay, cool, cool. Well, I think that's all the time we have for questions, Ken and Bill. Really great presentation. There are quite a few more questions left for you in the Q&A to answer. If you haven't answered the poll out there in the audience, make sure you make your selection now. We're about to announce our next prize winner. Ken, Bill, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Guys. We love working with you all. Looking forward to doing some more webinars with you in the future.